You're too loud inside. Your mind, it's noisy. You think too much. You talk too much. You're scattered, and that's why you're weak. Let me tell you something, my friend. Power doesn't come from chaos. It comes from clarity. And clarity is born when you learn to master your energy. So today, I'm going to teach you powerful lessons that helped me build my mind into a weapon, how to think less, speak less, and focus more. Are you ready? Then listen carefully, not just with your ears, but with your life. 1. Silence is your sword. Sharpen it daily. The man who constantly speaks, who always has something to say, often doesn't realize how much power he's losing in the process. Every word that leaves your mouth carries a piece of your energy. And if you're not careful, you end up giving that energy away to things that don't matter, to gossip, arguments, pointless opinions, and the endless search for approval. Most people speak just to fill silence, to feel seen, or to prove something to others. But what they don't realize is that every unnecessary word makes them weaker, not stronger. I learned early in my life that true strength is not about having the loudest voice. It's about having control over your voice. The strongest warriors, the most powerful minds, they don't speak often, not because they are empty, but because they are full of thought, full of awareness, full of presence. They have mastered the art of restraint. They know that silence is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of maturity, of self-control, of confidence. Silence is not the absence of power. It is power that has been trained, tamed, and stored with purpose. Silence is like a sword, but only if you sharpen it. And how do you sharpen it? By resisting the urge to always react, always reply, always explain. When you learn to stay quiet in moments where others would speak, you begin to feel your inner energy rise. You begin to notice the small things others miss, the tone behind someone's words, the hidden emotions in the room, the truth hiding behind someone's eyes. You become more aware, more connected, and more in control. And when you finally do speak, your words carry weight. They don't just fill space, they cut through confusion. They don't just express ideas, they shift the energy in the room. They don't just explain things, they leave an impact. That is what real mental discipline looks like. To have the strength to remain silent when silence is wiser than noise. To know that your presence speaks louder than your mouth ever could. To choose silence, not because you're empty, but because your actions already say everything that needs to be said. So remember this, silence is not something to fear or avoid. It is something to practice, something to strengthen, something to master. Because in a world that never stops talking, the one who knows when to stay silent becomes a force no one can ignore. 2. Cut the noise, or it will cut you. In today's world, your mind is under constant attack, not by swords or fists, but by noise. Noise from your phone, noise from social media, noise from the opinions of others, noise from your own doubts and overthinking. Most people wake up and immediately let the world pour into their minds, scrolling through news, watching content that doesn't serve them, listening to voices that confuse instead of clarify. And they wonder why they feel exhausted, anxious, and unable to focus. The truth is, mental clarity cannot survive in mental chaos. Every piece of information you consume takes up space in your mind. Every notification, every distraction, every useless conversation, it's all stealing your attention. And your attention is your most valuable resource. What you focus on becomes your reality. So if your mind is filled with noise, your life will reflect that same disorder. You'll struggle to stay present. You'll find it hard to concentrate. You'll start to feel disconnected from your goals, your values, and even from yourself. I understood this early. I treated my attention like a blade. I knew that whatever I allowed into my mind would either sharpen me or dull me. That's why I was ruthless about protecting my mental space. I didn't let negativity linger. I didn't engage in arguments that didn't matter. I didn't waste time trying to keep up with people who had no direction. I cut the noise because I knew it was trying to cut me, cut my energy, cut my clarity, cut my spirit. Mental discipline begins when you take responsibility for what enters your mind. That means turning off what doesn't serve you. That means unfollowing the people who drain you. That means choosing peace over stimulation, silence over noise, and purpose over popularity. It means being selective about what you listen to, what you watch, what you think about. Just like a warrior doesn't enter battle with a cluttered mind, you can't walk through life with mental chaos and expect to win. You need space, you need stillness, you need focus. And the only way to get that is to clear out the mental junk that's been weighing you down. So be ruthless with the noise. Remove it before it removes your peace. Because in a world that's constantly trying to distract you, mental discipline is the ability to protect your focus at all costs. That's how you stay powerful, even when the world around you is loud and chaotic. 3. Think less. Because overthinking is a silent killer. Most people don't even realize it, but they are prisoners of their own minds. They sit in silence, yet their thoughts scream. They try to move forward in life, but their mind builds walls of doubt, fear, and hesitation at every step. This is the disease of overthinking, a silent killer of potential. It doesn't strike suddenly like a sword. It erodes you slowly, day by day, moment by moment, thought by thought. Overthinking turns small decisions into mountains. It creates imaginary problems before reality even has a chance to speak. It fills your head with what-ifs and maybe-nots, until you're so tangled in thoughts that you forget how to act. You lose your momentum, you lose your courage, and eventually you lose yourself. But here is the truth I learned. Thinking is not the problem. Uncontrolled thinking is. The mind is a tool, a powerful one, but just like any tool, if you don't know how to use it, it will end up using you. You don't need to think all the time. You don't need to analyze every situation to death. You need to trust. You need to feel. You need to act with presence, not with paranoia. When I was in combat, whether in martial arts or in life, I didn't stop to think about every move. I didn't question my every step. I flowed. I responded with clarity, with instinct, with confidence that came not from thinking more, but from training deeply. I trusted the body. I trusted the moment. I trusted myself. And that's what freed me from the prison of overanalysis. Mental discipline means learning to stop the mind when it starts spinning useless thoughts. It means recognizing when your thoughts are helping you and when they're hurting you. It means replacing constant thinking with deep presence. When you are present, you are no longer trapped in the past or worried about the future. You are here, right now. And in that stillness, you become powerful. Most people live in their heads and call it being alive. But thinking alone is not living. Life happens in movement, in action, in doing. So the next time your mind starts spinning stories of fear, of doubt, of failure, don't fight it with more thinking. Step into the moment, take a breath, focus on what you can control, and move. Trust is stronger than thought. Action is louder than overthinking. And stillness, not mental noise, is where your true power lives. Discipline your mind not to think endlessly, but to think clearly, then act swiftly. That's how you escape the prison of doubt and become unstoppable. 4. Train your focus like a blade, sharp, direct, and unbreakable. Focus is not just about looking at something, it's about eliminating everything else. It's about bringing your entire being, your eyes, your breath, your mind, your energy, into a single point of attention and holding it there like a warrior holding a sword to an enemy's throat. Most people have never experienced this kind of focus because they've never trained their mind to stay still. Their attention jumps from one thing to another like a wild monkey, scrolling, switching, reacting, craving, and they wonder why they feel tired, scattered, and unfulfilled. But the truth is simple. Where your focus goes, your life goes. If your focus is weak, your results will be weak. If your focus is divided, your strength will be divided. I trained my focus the same way I trained my body, with discipline, intensity, and repetition. If I was practicing a single punch, I practiced it until my mind didn't wander, until my thoughts didn't drift, until my presence became absolute. Because in the moments that matter most, in combat, in creation, in crisis, you don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your training. And if your focus has never been trained, you will collapse under pressure. To sharpen your focus, you must first understand what dulls it. Multitasking is a myth. Constant stimulation is poison. Trying to do 5 things at once doesn't make you productive, it makes you average. I never aimed to be average, I aimed to be precise. So I built my days around depth, not distraction. If I was studying philosophy, that's all I did. No noise, no interruptions, just me and the page. If I was practicing movement, there was no music, no talking, no outside world, just breath and motion. That is how I turned simple moments into transformation. Your focus is like a blade, and just like a blade, if you don't care for it, it rusts. If you misuse it, it breaks. But if you protect it, if you sharpen it daily, if you use it with intention, it becomes the most powerful weapon you possess, not against others, but against the chaos inside you. So ask yourself, how many times a day do you let your attention get stolen? How often do you give your focus to things that don't grow you? Be honest, because every time you lose focus, you lose energy. And every time you waste energy, you delay your progress. Mental discipline means creating a life where your focus is protected. It means turning off the noise, setting clear boundaries, and doing one thing at a time, with depth, with presence, with your full being. That is how you begin to move like a master. That is how you stop living on the surface and start digging deep into your purpose. Don't just try to do more. Focus better, focus deeper, focus so fully that everything else fades. That's when you touch power most people will never know. And that is when your mind stops being your enemy and becomes your sword. 5. Speak less. Prove everything in silence. There is a deep strength in the man who chooses not to speak, not because he is afraid or unsure, but because he knows that truth doesn't need decoration and power doesn't need performance. In today's world, everyone wants to be heard. They shout louder, talk longer, explain endlessly, hoping that if they say it just right, the world will finally see their worth. But the truth is, the more you speak, the more you dilute your power. Real strength doesn't beg to be noticed, it simply is. And when it shows up, it commands the room without saying a word. I learned very early that silence is not something to be filled, it's something to be respected. There were moments in my life where I could have argued, explained, defended myself, but I didn't. Not because I didn't have the words, but because I knew that words were not the answer. My work was, my presence was, my mastery was. Most people are addicted to speaking. They use words to defend their ego, to seek approval, to prove their intelligence. But every time you try to prove yourself with words, you reveal your need for validation. Discipline means breaking that need. It means understanding that the loudest person in the room is usually the most insecure, and the one who can sit quietly, fully grounded in who they are, that is the one who carries real power. I never wanted to convince people with speeches. I wanted them to feel my presence when I entered a room. I wanted them to see the discipline in my movement, the clarity in my decisions, the focus in my eyes. You don't need to talk about who you are when your life is already showing it. That is the highest form of communication, not what you say, but how you live. The world is full of noise. Everyone is trying to sell you an image, a story, a version of themselves. But very few are living with enough truth to be silent, because silence forces people to look deeper. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and silence reveals what words are trying to hide. When you stop speaking so much, when you stop explaining yourself to people who never understood you to begin with, something magical happens. You reclaim your energy, you reclaim your time, you reclaim your identity. Mental discipline means you don't need to respond to every opinion, react to every insult, or explain every move. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to master your craft, walk your path, and let your actions speak on your behalf. And when your actions are loud enough, trust me, people will listen. Even in your silence, they will hear you. Speak less. Speak only when it adds value. Speak only when it carries truth. Let everything else be communicated through your energy, your presence, your commitment. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not your voice, but the force behind it. In the end, the world doesn't remember what you said. It remembers what you did. And those who speak less often leave the deepest echo. 6. Eliminate the unnecessary. Discipline is simplicity in action. The more you carry, the slower you move. The more you cling to, the harder it is to flow. In a world that constantly tries to convince you that you need more information, more possessions, more opinions, more achievements, real mental discipline is found in stripping all of that away. It is not in collecting, but in cutting. It is not in adding, but in removing. It is the art of letting go of everything that does not serve your purpose, your peace, or your power. When I trained, I didn't waste time on 1,000 techniques. I mastered a few and made them devastating. When I lived, I didn't fill my mind with useless drama, shallow conversations, or constant stimulation. I simplified, I refined, I focused. And that simplicity gave me clarity. That clarity gave me strength. That strength gave me freedom. Most people think discipline is about force, about willpower, about grinding harder. But let me tell you the truth. Discipline is about precision. It's about choosing wisely, cutting deeply, and moving lightly. It's not about pushing through clutter. It's about not having clutter in the first place. Take a moment and look at your life. Look at your daily routine. Look at your thoughts. Look at your environment. How many things are you holding on to that are weighing you down? How many habits are stealing your time? How many people are draining your energy? How many goals are actually distractions dressed as ambition? You cannot move forward with power if you're chained to what doesn't matter. I saw my mind like a training ground. If something didn't sharpen me, out. If a thought didn't bring clarity, gone. If a relationship pulled me off course, I walked away. That's not cold, that's discipline. Because I knew that energy is limited, time is limited, focus is sacred, and anything that tries to dilute that, even if it looks good on the surface, is an enemy to my evolution. People try to do everything, learn everything, please everyone, and they end up mastering nothing. That's not strength, that's noise. A disciplined mind knows its mission. It doesn't chase every idea. It doesn't accept every invitation. It doesn't fight every battle. It chooses the few things that matter and goes all in. When you eliminate the unnecessary, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to feel the weight lifting. Your thoughts become lighter. Your decisions become easier. Your path becomes clearer. And your movement becomes unstoppable. So ask yourself every day, do I need this? Does this serve who I'm becoming? Or is this just clutter wearing a mask? And if the answer is no, let it go. Be relentless. Be precise. Be bold enough to cut away the excess. Because in the end, the sharpest blade is not the one with the most steel. It's the one that has been refined, sharpened, and stripped of everything unnecessary. That is how you move through life like a warrior. That is how you build a mind that can walk through fire without flinching. Not by carrying more, but by carrying only what matters. Simplicity is not a weakness. It is the most advanced form of power, and the more you simplify, the more unstoppable you become. 7. Discipline is not restriction. It is liberation through mastery. People fear the word discipline. They treat it like a cage, like a punishment, like a joyless path where freedom goes to die. But that belief comes from misunderstanding. Discipline is not the prison. It is the key. It is the art of commanding your mind instead of being commanded by it. It is the silent rebellion against chaos. And most importantly, it is the highest form of self-respect. I've heard people say, but I want to live freely. I don't want to control everything. I don't want to live by strict rules. They think discipline means losing pleasure, losing fun, losing their spark. But what they don't understand is that without discipline, you are not free. You are trapped in bad habits, trapped in indecision, trapped in emotional reactions you can't control, trapped in cycles you never chose but can't seem to escape. Freedom without discipline is just a disguised form of slavery, because when you don't command your thoughts, your fears will. When you don't direct your focus, the world will hijack it. When you don't set the pace, someone else will set it for you, and you'll spend your whole life running someone else's race. Discipline is not about becoming rigid. It's about becoming unshakable. It's not about denying pleasure. It's about choosing which pleasures deserve your energy. It's not about living like a machine. It's about mastering the machine of your mind so it stops running wild and destroying your potential. Because let me tell you, an undisciplined mind is a dangerous companion. It will seduce you with comfort and destroy you with regret. It will whisper laziness when greatness is calling. It will feed you excuses when action is needed. And if you let it run free, it will turn your life into a loop of wasted days and unrealized power. When I was building my craft, my body, my philosophy, I didn't do it with half effort. I showed up every day, whether I felt like it or not. I didn't rely on motivation. I relied on principle. Motivation comes and goes like the wind. Discipline, that is your root, your anchor, your fire when the world goes cold. You think freedom is sleeping in every day, doing what you want whenever you feel like it? Number, that's how mediocrity is born. Real freedom is knowing you are in control, that no matter what life throws at you, chaos, pain, pressure, you have trained yourself to stay grounded, to stay moving, to stay focused. You are not at the mercy of your mood, your impulses, or your circumstances. You choose your thoughts. You choose your response. You choose your direction. That is power. That is peace. That is liberation. There were nights I wanted to rest, but I trained. Mornings I wanted to stay in bed, but I moved. Times when fear crept in, but I faced it head on. Not because I didn't feel weakness, but because I had trained my discipline to be stronger than my weakness. And that's the secret. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The man who lives with discipline becomes dangerous, not to others, but to his own limitations. He becomes a force, a presence. He walks into rooms with quiet confidence because he knows he has done the work in silence. And that kind of man doesn't need to prove anything. His energy speaks before his mouth ever opens. So if you truly want freedom, stop chasing ease, stop avoiding effort, stop worshipping comfort. Build your discipline, sharpen it daily, let it guide your thoughts, your actions, your speech, your time, and watch what happens. You'll start moving differently, thinking differently, living differently. You'll realize that everything you were searching for outside, peace, clarity, strength, it was always inside, waiting to be awakened by your discipline. Discipline is not a cage, it is the master key. The moment you understand this, everything in your life begins to change. You don't become someone else. You become who you were meant to be all along, clear, focused, powerful, free. Mental discipline isn't some secret formula locked away in ancient books or mystical teachings. It is built in silence, forged in focus, mastered in simplicity. Think less, not because thoughts are the enemy, but because clarity is your ally. Speak less, not because you are weak, but because your strength speaks without sound. Focus more, not because the world asks for it, but because your life demands it. Each lesson you've heard today is not just theory, it's a way of life, a choice, a code. You want to be powerful? Then quiet your mind and sharpen your presence. You want to be respected? Then discipline your habits and live with intention. You want to be free? Then master the chaos within before trying to conquer the world outside. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to explain who you are. You just need to live with such intensity, such precision, such inner peace that the world takes notice on its own. Be like water, yes, but also be like the blade that rests within it. Still, focused, and when the moment comes, unstoppable. Now go, sharpen your silence, discipline your mind, and let your life do all the speaking from this moment forward.